Welcome back to another episode of Questions with Crocker with me, Dr. Crocker, and my husband, Shane.
Right.
We are back. We had a couple weeks off because of the holidays and just life in general. So we are ready to rock this episode. Just a little note for people listening. We are going to talk about some things that might not be ideal for kids to listen to. So if you listen to us normally with your whole family, you might just want to preview this episode beforehand. Also, Shane's giving me a look.
That's a strange intro.
A strange intro. Let's get to our regular intro. So I am Dr. Crocker, an emergency veterinarian. Shane is an entrepreneur extraordinaire and my husband. Together we own a general practice. I work emergency medicine and also do some speaking and social media. We like to talk about our lives on here, but we are far from experts. And I want to make that really clear with this episode specifically. We talk about our experience. We share what people share with us online. But this is our opinions.
People don't share stuff with me online, if we're being truthful.
You're not the online personality in this relationship?
No.
Okay. Well, I am, and I'm here. So if you want to watch us, you can watch us on YouTube. If you want to listen to us, you can listen to us on Apple or Spotify podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave us a review. We would love to get more reviews and get feedback from you. I'm excited to get into this one today. And if you are watching us on YouTube, I would just like to say, if anyone else is married to a partner that doesn't believe in turning the heat on until it is like icicles in the house, that is why I'm wearing the fluffiest fleece right now in our house, because it's freezing. Why can't we turn the
good?
It does. How cold is it in this house right now? Are you going to look at it?
It'll take me a minute to pull it up.
Is the heat on?
No, the heat's definitely not on.
I know we live in Texas, but it is officially December, so potentially we could turn the heat on. I woke up one of our kids this morning and he was like, "It's so cold, Mom." So we might need to consider it at this point in time. Are you still looking?
It just says, it didn't tell me the actual temperature.
It's cold. The temperature is cold. See, it's not even reading because it's
the heat will come on if it gets down to 67. So it's hotter than that.
Okay. I don't know that I believe that, and it's definitely not that at night. I don't know what it gets down to at night. Is that because what do you have it on? Eco?
I don't know. This thing's above my pay grade, to be honest.
The Nest is not something we understand in any way, shape, or form. Well, I'm freezing, but I'm excited to...
67. That's like a perfect temperature.
That is not what it was last night. I'm going to look at it overnight, and then I'm going to... Anyways, I sleep, let's be honest, I sleep with like 2 blankets on top of me, my weighted blanket and another blanket, and you sleep with like nothing on you. So I think we just have a difference in our overall
body temperature,
heating and cooling mechanisms, and what we believe is hot or cold, or you're just cheap.
There's truth to that.
Trying to save a couple bucks.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm going to look and see how much money we actually saved the past couple weeks freezing to death in general.
Nobody's freezing to death.
Okay. So, I did work ER the last couple nights, and I feel bad. I need to be honest, because on social media, I was talking about how after the holidays, what do we call Friday? Do you remember?
Huh?
You
called something Friday?
Are you even listening to me right now?
Yeah. What do we call Friday?
Yeah. On social media, I said in vet med, after the holidays, we call Friday what?
I have no idea.
Brown Friday. And why did I say that?
Oh, yeah. Because they eat all the junk.
They eat everything. Yeah, on Thanksgiving. And then they have diarrhea and issues. And so we see them in the ER and GP practices on Friday, like a ton of diarrhea. But I lied because I worked ER over the holidays, and that is not the majority of what I saw. I thought it would be. There was a little bit of it. But the main thing I saw was actually hit by car dogs. There was a ton of owned dogs that were brought in as like strays. So a Good Sam brought them in and they were hit by cars. So what is your guess on why that happens more over the holidays?
Probably because more packages being delivered and they open the freaking door to get packages and they take off. I do think it's related to opening the door more. So our assumption is people are visiting your house and they are not as aware of like your pets. And so the dogs are getting out over the holidays because people are visiting or other dogs are in the house and there's just a lot going on. More. Yeah. But it was really sad because there was a lot of like small dogs that you could just tell like were owned by somebody and had like collars on. And then they were brought in by a Good Sam that found them
basically on the side of the road or found them somewhere hit by a car. And a lot of them were not microchipped. So this is like the PSA, microchip your pets. There was a few that were, and we were able to contact owners. And luckily those dogs were stable. But there were some that were not stable, had really significant injuries, or like their backs were broken. We had one come in that was a DOA, so was not alive. And we had no way to contact anyone. And so eventually we had a couple of phone calls come in, and we had to tell people like, yes, your dog did come in and this is what happened. And everyone was devastated. But it was just really abnormal, but also, I guess with the holidays, not that abnormal. Does that make sense?
It does, actually.
And it's really sad because with a broken back dog hit by car, like you can't fix that, you know? So I really would have preferred to see a lot of diarrhea dogs over seeing that. It was a little traumatic, but it is the holidays, and the holidays in vet med are known to be really hard because we see a huge increase in people electing euthanasia for their pets. Why do you think that is?
Probably financial constraints from the holidays. Everybody spends a lot of money.
That is definitely part of it, because they're having to pay for presents and travel and other things. The other big thing that we see, though, is people like waiting till kids come home from college to make the hard decision about especially senior pets. And they want their kids to be there. So when the kids are there, that's when they decide to come in and have their pets put to sleep so everyone can kind of have that closure.
I would prefer they did that without me being there.
I know. Well, I always wonder that. And I guess if it's like your childhood pet, maybe it's harder. But I would say in general, what pet in your life were you ever like super attached to?
Probably none of them.
Like, I don't feel like you've ever told me a story of like a childhood pet other than to say like some got run over in the yard by your uncle.
Yes.
When you were growing up. Because you're in the middle of nowhere and the dogs were just everywhere. But however, you have to admit now your parents are obsessed with their dog.
Yes.
Like hand feed her. And I never would have thought that of your parents. So they are.
Good dog.
She is a good dog. She's a hunting dog. Kind of.
Yeah. She used to hunt.
That's what she was got for. Now she's a very pampered, privileged dog who lives in your house that your parents actually give allergy medication to, which I also never thought that. When they asked me what to do about her itching and I told them to go to the vet and she probably needed Apoquel, I really thought that they'd be like, what? And they're all about it. So it makes me sad you've never had a childhood dog or pet that like really got to you. None?
Mm-mm.
Mine was horses. Like I've had horses that I had since I was younger and then lost them, and they like made big impacts on me, which is why I became a veterinarian and a horse vet at that. But I feel like people are going to be like, how did you even marry somebody who is not about the animals?
I don't dislike the animals.
But you're not like super connected to them.
I agree.
Do you think though, then you'll be like your dad, and when we're like old and retired, you'll all of a sudden have some dog or cat that's your buddy?
I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe, potentially.
I'm going to hold that hope out for you.
Hope not.
I think everyone should have that. Everyone needs to have that connection and have that.
I like Betty and Boudreaux. Those are good dogs.
They were dogs. They were good dogs. Our last labs. I don't think we realized how good of dogs they were until we got our coat.
Yeah. Now I like them a lot better.
we miss them even more now. He's like sitting over there trying to figure out what he can get into. Oh my gosh. So yes, take home is be really kind to your veterinary team over the holidays, because it is rough out here over the holidays. Increasing euthanasia, increase in sad cases, difficult financial conversations. I know everyone right now in the world is having a hard time, but man, it's definitely a struggle. Speaking of a struggle, let's talk about the fun on social media sometimes that we experience, especially when I make a video that's like a trend and I really don't think it's going to ruffle feathers. And then there's always like the one or two people that decide that they're going to get their feathers ruffled. So there's a trend going around right now. And basically the hashtag is WomeninMaleFields. So have you seen this trend?
No.
What trend have you seen?
I see a lot of golf trends.
Is there golf trends?
I don't
know. So basically what it is women making videos, and they're basically saying like, he texted me a couple times in a row. I only answered his last text and then I ghosted him. And they're basically speaking to like things that men have done notoriously and like women are doing it. So in the human healthcare field, they've talked about like things that have been said or done to women. So like one person was like, he said he wanted to be a doctor and I asked him, well, how was he going to raise his kids? So basically something that is notoriously said to women when they're trying to do certain jobs or careers and is not necessarily said to men. The Amazon guys here.
He may lose it.
We might have a dog lose his mind, but we'll see. He's looking for him. Our dog is outside sometimes and he harasses all the Amazon and UPS people. And this guy's like, where's the dog? Do you see his face? I feel bad. He's all bark and no bite, but he's a big dog, so he scares them. Okay, so I made one and basically I was getting ready for surgery. And he said he just had a baby and I hit him with, who's raising your kid since you're here helping my dog? And this is based off a true story that I had happened to me. So I had a baby and I was working in small animal medicine and I was seeing someone's dog and it was an older lady and she was like, weren't you pregnant last time I was here? And I was like, yes, ma'am, I was. I had, my baby. And she was basically like, well, who's raising your baby if you're here? And it wasn't in like a nice questioning way. It was very much like, why are you here if you have a baby at home? And it kind of shocked me because for the most part, I felt like in small animal, I worked for people who were very supportive and great about my pregnancy and about me, pumping at work and just all the things that other people can struggle with. But her comment threw me off guard a little bit. And in general, when we had our baby, did anyone ask you, why are you working and not at home with your baby?
No. Never received that.
Would you ever even imagine someone would ask you that? And some of the other things that people said were like, well, who's watching your baby? A lot of people were like, well, when did they start? Oh, daycare's raising your baby. That was like a really common thing that was said also. And were those things ever said to you?
No.
So I think the big thing is, the perception of you can't be a veterinarian and be a mom too. So I made this video and honestly, I was just like making it as part of the trend. And also, when you think about those experiences, it's frustrating, even though a majority of my experiences have been really good. And it very much resonated with people in our industry. Had a ton of comments, a ton of people messaging me different things. But there was one person, there's always one. There was one male veterinarian, and he basically was like, this doesn't apply to veterinary medicine. And what he said is, it's because it's not male dominated. This is a female dominated field. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think there probably are more women veterinarians today than men, but I don't know that. I've never seen the stats on that. I know it used to be a male-dominated field for sure.
I have the stats.
Well, I'm sure we're going to get to the stats.
I did my research because I was like, I know
there's more females going to vet school, I feel like.
Yes. 80%. 80% of people in vet school say that they're female. And so that's a pretty large percentage. But in 2023, the AVMA indicated that 67% of U.S. veterinarians were female. So definitely a majority of female veterinarians are female. I think the question is, what is the word dominant mean in a profession, right? So you can say there's more people, but like, what is the more dominant sex? So that is kind of what I said in response. And this person did not want to listen to what I was saying. And ultimately what it came down to is they didn't really understand the trend and they backed off of some of their misinformed statements. And I don't want to put this person's name out there because they had a lot of people already like message them and give them feedback. But it was interesting to have someone feel so strongly about it. And I know I've seen like Texas A&M put up a picture of like their graduate class last year. And there was actually some older veterinarians, female and male, that were like, this is why our profession's dying. All the females that are graduating versus males. Females are only working like half the amount of time males are. Like they were in the comments saying things that I was like.
Yes. So again, I think it's more about the comments toward female veterinarians than it is whether or not there's more males or females in the field. Like,
yes.
I mean, Dr. White was part of the first class that that had the first female veterinarian student in it, right? And that was what, in the 60s?
I think it was a little later than that. Like, because I looked up when the first female started and I was like, oh, it was not as long ago as I thought it was, you know, when you had them enter the profession. There's a lot to unpack.
But I guess the question is, why do people say the industry is dying compared to what it was 30 years ago, right?
So I think there's a lot around that. And working with a veterinarian that was in his 60s, 70s, you got a lot of the perception. So, I mean, the cost of vet school that he had, the pressure on him, the type of practice he had, the type of medicine that he practiced. He said to me many times he could not have worked like he did if he was going to spend actual time with his children. He only saw them when they were like at his practice or in his truck. And he could not have done what he did without the support of his wife.
Yeah, again, so he worked all the time to see his family. So now people are mad because veterinarians want to spend a little bit of time at home. How is that hurting the profession? Like, to me, you're looking at it wrong. Like, to me, the profession is stronger and better because now you have a more rounded person that's not
going to get burnt out
and working just because they have to, you know, make ends meet. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
100%. And I think the pressure on veterinarians is more like the access to vets is more like, you know, he used to say he would leave his house and no one could get a hold of him. So he'd go like to a roping and then he'd get home and have messages on his, you know, answering machine and then call people. But he wasn't expected to be available 24/7. And then even when people were more available, you still had a large group of veterinarians that felt like their job was to be available to everyone. So pet owners were trained for a really long time, like to have more access, but also the expectations for the care that their pets received and the cost of the care was very different. So I think expectations as a whole for veterinarians has increased. On top of that, you have more females that are doing this job that already have a lot of pressure and expectations with their homes and their families. And so the added burden of both of those, people finally said, like, it's enough and I'm not going to work 60, 80 hours at a job where people actually don't appreciate that much, like what I'm giving. And instead, I'm going to take care of myself, set stronger boundaries. And yes, that did come with more female, but also a younger generation coming in, because I know young male veterinarians that set stronger boundaries because they want to be engaged with their kids. And that same veterinarian that mentored me that was older told me, do not do what I did. I didn't know my children until I finally realized I needed to like slow down. So I don't think there's anything wrong with females saying, hey, there's time periods in my career where I want to slow down or I need to be more intentional with my family. I've done that too. But I also think that just the perception that the industry is hurt because we're setting more boundaries as females, I think is frustrating.
So back to this guy's original comment, he was basically like, this video doesn't apply because there's more females in the industry than males.
Yeah, because it's female dominated. So what
does that have to do with the comment though? The comment's still the comment. Like,
exactly. So there's still sexism and misogyny and all the other things in our field. And so that was what I kind of put up a question box of like, asking people, what do you think? Like, I don't want to just use my experience because, again, I had good experiences as a pregnant and breastfeeding mom. I've had supportive bosses that have allowed me to take time in the small animal world, you know, with my kids. So I can't necessarily say that it's been dramatically different for me. So I wanted to know what other people had experienced. I definitely experienced sexism and other things, but I did have a lot of people write in. So at Jenny Lee 23 said we experienced the same level of misogyny as all other professions. That's true, I think, like in the world in general. At Ann W. Velasquez says it applies across all fields. Keep speaking about it because I do think it is something that unless we keep talking about it, people aren't going to keep changing and like recognizing when they're saying things that aren't appropriate. And this is something that pet owners listen to too, this podcast. And so I'm making it so that in general, hopefully people.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think anybody can have their own opinions, right? But you don't have to always share your opinions. Like this old lady could have been thinking in her head, like, okay, well, who's at home raising her kid? But yeah. There's no reason to express that.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Ask the question. It's just.
I think the lack of filter in general in our society is an issue. But at Lauren Brown 1313 said, there's more females, but males somehow are more respected and more wanted. It's infuriating.
I don't know if I agree with that.
You don't think so?
I don't think it's, I mean, when we're out there looking for veterinarians, we're not saying I want a male vet.
I know, but I think we might be different than other people. And there are other things. So this is what I started thinking about is, do you remember what would happen when we went on emergency calls when I was working on horses? And you would go with me in the middle of the night sometimes because I didn't know the people. And we would both get out of the truck. And like these are people I talked to on the phone, like I took the emergency from, right? But they hadn't actually met me as the veterinarian before. They were just calling the emergency line. So we would get out of the truck. And I would say a majority of the time people would do what?
Ask me if I was the vet.
100%. They would walk right up to you and be like, hey, doc, da, da, da. And you're like,
not me.
It's her. She's the one. So I am not alone in that experience. I had a ton of people send me messages, and it was interesting because I had a lot of male, female, like husband-wife teams that messaged me, and they either worked in practices together, and their experiences with the way clients acted and even the team treated them was very different. But as practice owners, there was a couple people who messaged me, and they said their interactions with drug reps, with people at conferences, like with the business side of things, there was definitely more respect and like deference given to the husband's opinion. And they were the ones that were approached about business things more than the wife was. And I think you and I...
I have a question about that. Is that... How do I say this?
You can say whatever you want to say. I mean, I think it's good to have both of our perspectives on here.
So as a drug rep, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a drug rep, I'm probably going to interact more with the male veterinarian than I am the female.
Because are you saying you're a male drug rep?
I'm a male drug rep.
Okay.
I'm probably going to interact more and ask more questions of the male vet than the female vet just because I feel more comfortable. Does that make sense?
You're saying it's not because you're saying this person is making the business decisions or you respect them more. You're just saying like, I'm a guy and I'm going to talk to the guy.
More than likely, I would feel more inclined to talk to the guy because I have more similarities.
Things to talk about,
yes.
How the Cowboys do,
yes.
like that kind of stuff. I mean, I would say even that assumption of like...
I mean, even like our BI rep, great guy. He comes in and talks all the time when I'm there, and we talk about bourbons and sports and oil field. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. So you feel like you just vibe more with them, but it's not an intentional decision. I mean, I think that could be valid for sure. I think what's interesting to me is I had an experience where I was speaking at a conference about business-related topics, and then I kind of got together with a group of people that were business leaders and owners, and so we were talking about different things, and I was like, honestly, this is how I would do it, this is what I would do, and kind of giving my opinion on the situation. And I had one of them turn to me and look at me and say, you do business like a man. And I was like, okay, like, is it a compliment? Is it not? What? And I said, like, what does that mean? Because I didn't really understand. And they were like, you're not emotional. You're really logical about your decisions. You have no problem like making quick decisions, and, the decisions are made and you go with it. And you don't necessarily care like that everyone likes you and what they think. And so that in itself is sexist to assume that as a woman, I can't, like, I would be emotional as an owner and I'd make decisions a certain way. Does that make sense? So
does, yes.
I think they probably meant it as a compliment, but in a way it was like a backwards compliment.
But then the question becomes, the majority of the female leaders in the industry, do they come across as being emotional?
I don't know that answer to that question. But when you bring up female leaders, I do think it's important to talk about, and this was the point I was making to the person who was replying on our thing, is I still firmly believe that veterinary medicine is a male-dominated field. And that is because the majority of people in leadership positions, practice ownership positions, corporate owner positions, all the high-level decision-making positions, majority of them are held by men. So when you have males in those power levels, and the AVMA is an exception, like the Veterinary Association has a more female dominant house. We've had a couple female presidents the last couple years. So that's the exception. But in all of these other business entities within our profession, they are mostly male owned. And so I think that that is telling for who is more dominant in the conversation. And I actually got a little bit of information in that. So the deans, it's now almost 50-50 with the vet school deans being women and men. And with the 5 new vet schools that are proposed, it will eventually be more women that are veterinary deans. But in all the large corporations that run veterinary hospitals, there's only one woman CEO at Zoetis, and the majority of them are male-owned. A majority of practice owners and specialists are still male, which there's really good information. The Women's Veterinary Leadership Development Initiative put out good information on why that is. So men become specialists more readily because they are not, a lot of them are not having children, taking like time out of their career for different things. And so the track to specialties faster for them and easier. The other interesting thing is, despite there being more women in the profession, a 2021 study showed that there's still a pretty good pay gap. So in private practice, female veterinarians, the average pay was $115,000 compared to male veterinarians, which were at $130,000. So a pretty good pay gap there. In specialty, the pay gap is even more. If you have surgeons, like a female surgeon, median income is much less than male. So to me, that still speaks to the dominance of...
I guess the question is, why is anybody paying flat salaries anymore, not a percentage of production? And then it wouldn't matter because production would be production.
But that's not true, because that still might not be equal, because let's say you're a female and you can't take as many cases because you have other responsibilities that you have to take care of with childcare, or you take off for 3 months for... in general.
So I look at that different though. I look at it as production's production, and you have a choice to stay and produce or spend time at home with your family. Like, I don't think that has anything to do with male or female. That to me is more of a choice.
Like a personality choice?
Yeah. If you're paying the same production to a male versus a female, and one produces more than the other, then it has nothing to do with male or female. It's just a choice of how you want to produce. I mean, there's a lot of females that you work with in the ER that make a ton of money, that work crazy hours.
100%.
And they choose to do that.
100%. One of the big differences, though, is whether or not they have children.
Again, that's a choice, though.
I would agree.
Even as a male, even as a male, you can choose to stay and work or go home and spend time with your family and share in that family responsibility.
I would agree. And we have I don't want anyone to get it twisted. You and I think, have a very even childcare load. And honestly, when I travel, you have a majority of the childcare load because you work from home and you take them to activities and you get them to school. So I don't want anyone to think that anything you say means you are not engaged and like doing as much or even more than me. I think that when it comes to organizing the house and doing things, a majority of households, the women are still very much pushing that. So let's go through a couple of these other circumstances. And what I want you to do is tell me if you have ever had these things happen to you. Okay? I just feel like that's, a good way to do it. So at Sure Pounding said, when I was pregnant and went into a room, the owner asked for a vet that had a clear mind instead of me. At Saya22 Yogo said, I still walk in the room with male techs or assistants and people always assume that they are the doctor. That's definitely happened to me as a vet too. The at Death's Mark Moth said, I watch a very competent female doctor walk in the room and people always ask, where's the doctor? Because in their mind, only the men are the doctors. At drdavis.dvm said, I got told I would need to stop or drop out of vet school by our male vet student dean when I chose to have a daughter during school. It's 100% still a problem every day. A lot of students said that the male students were treated better than them in school and prioritized for a lot of things. At Jamie Becker said, someone said, it's a shame you spent all those years at school just to stay home and take care of your kids. Do you think anyone says that to you as a stay-at-home dad / work-from-home person? It's a shame you went to school just to stay home?
Not to me, no.
Okay. A lot of people that did large animal work said they definitely experienced a lot of questioning if they're able to do things. Someone that I don't want to say what their at was, just in case someone knows them, said, I was told by a practice manager I was being way too emotional when I pointed out the emotional abuse that was happening in our workplace. At Aaron Texa also said, men would call me sweetie and ask if I was okay to work on their cattle. At Shan MKK, this one, it made me laugh, but she said, they asked her, how long will you be here before you go on maternity leave? And she said, I wasn't even pregnant and was just newly hired. And she was like, how did I even know how to respond to that? Someone said that a client requested to see the male doctor because they said that men were more educated, and they said that the vet didn't look even old enough to be a veterinarian. So a lot of these things, this one at Rachel Costello said, assuming that I'm a vet nurse despite having veterinary surgeon written right on my scrubs. So I think in general, if you're a woman in this field, these things apply to you. On the specialist front, a lot of people said that were specialists said that the male specialists definitely are treated differently and get base salaries that are higher than them. And I find that easy to believe. But this statement I thought was one of the best ones. So I wanted to end with this. At Dr.Allison.dvm said, a man saying there isn't gender inequality is like a worse white person saying racism doesn't exist. Like, unless you're walking in our shoes.
Lost camera too.
Then you can't experience what we've experienced. And I think that that's valid. And I think listening to people's experiences and taking them in and seeing if you're a part of the problem or the solution is also really, really important. And so because I got so many replies, and this is like a quarter of what I got, I just wanted to make sure we highlighted people's experiences and we shared them on here. Obviously, I've had some of my own. I have found really supportive places to work that have been great. And luckily, I have a partner that helps with I don't want to say burden, but helps with how much goes into taking care of children. But if I didn't have you, I could not do a majority of what I do. I don't know how I would do it on my own. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having this conversation. And I also hope that if people are having a hard time or in a place that is not supportive as a woman in our field, that they know that there's better places out there and there's other opportunities for them.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, again, there's a huge shift going on. So if you're not comfortable in the place you're working, you can find somewhere else to work this day and age. But also, don't be ignorant. Like just
this guy online. Oh,
people in general, just don't make ignorant comments.
I know. When he wrote it, as soon as he wrote it, I was like, oh, this is not going to go well for him, knowing who's on my social media. But it obviously was something that needed to be talked about. It obviously was something that needed to be talked about and needed to be discussed.
But I do think times are still changing and rapidly changing. I mean, if you think about what happened, 20 years ago, it's significantly better today than it was then. So is it perfect? No, but I think things are changing and progressing. So
I do too. I'll be interested to see where the profession goes. And hopefully as practice owners, you and I are making a culture in a hospital where everyone feels supported and appreciated that is on our team. We have not had a pregnant veterinarian part of our team yet, but I'm sure hopefully we'll work through that and do the things that we need to do to support them. So if you enjoyed this and you want to hear more, you can go to Apple or Spotify podcasts. If you want to share your experience.
Let us know your experiences as well.
And opinions. Yeah. Because
and from the male perspective.
Oh, you want more men to write in?
Chime in and see what they think. Yeah.
I'm happy to hear male perspectives.
I mean, if this is going backwards probably quickly, but about the, salaries, negotiate a stronger salary.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, don't just accept what they're giving you and negotiate. Hey, what's everybody else making? Is this equivalent to what everybody else is making?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know. Anyways.
I think that there's a lot more we could probably discuss, but it is good to keep talking about it. And I really appreciate people who sent me their experiences. I did have some people that wrote me stories that I didn't feel comfortable sharing on here because potentially it'd be something that if someone they worked with heard them, but things that are far worse than anything I shared. So we obviously have a way to go, but I think it's our world that is still hopefully moving in the right direction. And I enjoyed the trend online, and you should go check it out. If you haven't, we'll post a video on the podcast too, so you can see it. And I just appreciate people being here and listening. I'm glad we're back, and let's go enjoy the rest of our day.